Hi there. Good evening. My name is Ben Albers. I'm the exhibitions director here at the Lawrence Art Center. Thanks for joining us for this virtual gallery talk this evening with Jos Sances and Elizabeth Schultz. We're coming to you from Lawrence, Kansas, and yeah, we're very excited to bring this great conversation to you all. It would have been great to have it in person, but this is as close as we're going to get to each other. So really, thank you for joining us. We're really proud to have this exhibit here, this piece. I don't have a count on how many people have come to see it over the month that it's been open, but I can tell you that it's been steady, and if you are in the area, I strongly encourage you to come check it out. I don't think you've seen anything like it. I want to thank the Trust Company of Kansas for their support of this exhibition. They're great friends of the Art Center, and we couldn't have done it without them. So thanks to everybody over there. Tonight, our two guests are going to have a conversation about the piece, about the sources connected to the piece, and they're just going to kind of go for it. We've had some great conversations already, and I feel that you're gonna enjoy this. Our first guest is Elizabeth Schultz. She's a professor emerita in English, and she taught at KU, University of Kansas, for many years. She served as chair of the Humanities and Comparative Literature programs. Her writings include literary criticism, poetry, short stories, as well as translations from Japanese to English. Dr. Schultz has taught courses all over the globe. She spent most of her career at the University of Kansas. She is most known, however, for being one of the foremost scholars on the Herman Melville work, Moby-Dick. She's curated numerous Moby-Dick illustration exhibits, including at the Spencer Museum of Art here in Lawrence, Kansas. And she also wrote Unpainted to the Last, Moby-Dick and American Art, 1940 through 90. She is a member of the Melville Society. And on a personal note, she's a great friend to Lawrence, Kansas, and to the Lawrence Art Center. So thank you for being here, Beth. Jos Sances, who's coming to us from Berkeley, California. He was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and for over 40 years, he has made a living as a printmaker and a muralist in the San Francisco Bay Area. Jos is the founder of Alliance Graphics that began in 1989 and ran a successful union screen print shop. Previously, he co-founded the Mission Graphica at the Mission Culture Center in 1980 and worked there until 1988. While maintaining a steady output of art to address issues and ideas from, ideas that concern him. From 2010 to 16, the Library of Congress acquired 490 prints of his. He is an artist and a community collaborator for over 25 years with murals and public art, and art is his passion for sure. And with that, I want to thank the two of you for being here. And Jos, I want to hand it over to you now.
Thanks, Ben. I wanted to start tonight by reading something about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I am deeply troubled by the absence of national leaders who represent values that I feel that do not represent values that I feel are necessary to protect us and our planet. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of the last brave defenders of equality and civil liberties on the Supreme Court. An equal to Thurgood Marshall, and her commitment to civil rights, justice for all, and most importantly, the creation of a more perfect union. Justice Ginsburg worked to protect us from the excesses of authoritarian control. She was a larger-than-life hero, and she will be sorely missed, maybe when we need her most. Thank you. I think Elizabeth Schultz is going to read a poem, and again, as kind of a tribute to to Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I'm very honored that Josh asked me to join to participate in what is an opportunity to really honor his great mural, which we'll be talking about in a minute, by reading a poem. This poem doesn't only honor Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but I think it honors all people who love the sea. It's called Mrs. Noah Takes the Helm. We set no sails, we climbed no rigging, we moved according to the waves' whim, the wind's will, the moon's fancy. Across that vast plain of water, we bobbed and bounced, little more than sea foam, as uncertain and hopeful as milkweed fluff. Only Noah noted our direction. The sun's rise and fall gave us east and west, and he fixed the ark's bow on a point in between. Only Noah kept time. On the long pine that was our tiller, he marked the days. At night we lost both time and direction. Shade came over us like a familiar tent, the stars shining through its worn canvas. Noah slept among the goats and sheep, and I stood watch while the ark surged into darkness. On certain nights, I nudged the tiller and took us out onto the moon's path. Phosphorescence flickered in the water. The eyes of ocelots and lemurs and owls glowed. For company, I had the sibilance of chimpanzees snoring and a coyote duet ricocheting off the invisible horizon. No one would tell when I guarded the ark skyward, up onto the highway of stars, to meet Draco and Pegasus and Aquila and all our glittering ancestors. Thank you, Josh, for asking me to share that with everybody, and thank you, everybody, for allowing me to share this poem.
Very, very beautiful. Thank you. And I think set a wonderful tone to start, maybe.
Is Ben coming back? I think, okay. Josh, we have the rest of our time on the screen together to talk about your incredible mural, which so many people in Lawrence, Kansas have enjoyed seeing. Maybe you could just begin by telling us how you became inspired to create this magnificent piece, which occupies an entire wall. I don't know how large this wall is, but it is as large as a whale. It is as large as the ark. It is a magnificent work that contains us all.
Yeah, the whale's 51 feet, which actually is the size of probably a normal-sized female sperm whale. And they say the whale that Moby-Dick was modeled after was Mocha-Dick, and rumor has it he was 85 feet that actually destroyed the Essex, which was the model for the Pequod. But yes, it all started actually by me. I went to Baja California. Oh, I think I've gone for 5 or 6 years now. And I went to this wonderful workshop in Todos Santos and taught screen printed ceramic tile in a workshop by a wonderful woman, Donna Billick. And I loved being there so much, and I ended up getting some commissions there and spending more time there. So while I was still working, when I started going there, I could only go for 2 weeks during the holidays. And my family would join me, the grandchildren and children and my wife, and we had a wonderful time in Baja and found it a beautiful, beautiful place. And at any rate, so I kept going back, and there were times since I've retired, I've spent over a month there and have friends, including a fisherman who I've been out with a number of times, and is very adept at getting out right amongst the whales. And so actually having a direct experience with the whales, the scale of them, I think it's like many things. You can't imagine it until you're right next to it and you see how large it is. And I wanted to put that in the artwork, that the initial awe that I felt from first seeing whales, and being close to them in a boat much smaller than them, having them swim right under your boat, belly up, and you can see this thing could flip this boat over very easily. And to also get a sense as they spy you going by that they're taking you in, and there actually is, you feel an exchange between you and the animal, and having the blow come on you, this kind of anchovy spray. It's almost like a spiritual thing. And so at any rate, I had those experiences and came back, and I was back east. My wife was researching a book, and we went to the whaling museums in Nantucket and New Bedford. And leaving there, I said to her, I said, I should reread Moby-Dick. I'm really curious what I would think of it now. And so literally about a couple of weeks later, she gave me this version of Moby-Dick, which is absolutely incredible. It's a 1930 Rockwell Kent illustrated Moby-Dick. And it's there it is. It's an amazing version of it, the book. And I was inspired by both Rockwell Kent's illustrations and even more. And it took me a while. I'm not an academic. It took me a while to crack the language and to read it and start to understand it. But once I did, it turned into poetry to me. And I read it just getting pleasure from the words and the adventure story. But there's so many things in the book. I mean, there's Melville, the scientist and the naturalist. There's Melville, the adventure storyteller. There's Melville, who's telling you a story, in my way of interpreting it, which was about class and capitalism in America. And the ship was a metaphor for that, and the whale was a metaphor for the natural world. And from the owners of the ship who never get on the ship, to the white captain, to the white first, second, and third mate, then to all the sailors of color. It became a story that this is just the way it goes in America. And again, the workers on the Pequot, which, as Elizabeth said, was really just a factory. It really was. It was a factory that made whale oil, went to sea for a few years and made whale oil, which was the most valuable commodity at the time in this country before the discovery of oil. It's what they used to lubricate the wheels of steam-driven industry. And it was worth a lot. And men went to sea and risked their lives. It was incredibly dangerous work. So all of this just immediately became the story of America to me. And I depicted in The Whale this story from 1850 to the present, except for an image of the slaughter of the Pequots. They were the first Native Americans who were exterminated by a combination of the Pilgrims and some of the New England tribes. And the other New England tribes were shocked at the brutality of the Pilgrims. And they wiped them out. And so it's no accident that Melville could have named the boat anything he wanted. Melville named it the Pequot for a reason. And I think he was saying that this ship of state that we have began with the extermination of Native people. And I don't think there's any doubt that that was his message. And so in the piece, I have many things about Native Americans. And there's also parts of, again, he, in an offhanded way, he talks about slavery and race and class in a way that I think he's got to be talking about it before anybody else in the United States. And so again, I could see all those things, and I wanted to put those things in the whale, and basically tell history from my perspective from then to the present.
I don't think you out.
Huh?
I don't leave anybody out.
I put a lot. There's a few things there's things I can think of that I should have put in that I didn't. But then again, I did the piece. I really started at the snout and drew until I got to the back, and when I began, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. By the time and it took me 8 months to make the drawing, and I pretty much drew every day for that time, and it was not work. I couldn't wait to start drawing again the next day, and frequently I'd start drawing while I was still in my pajamas, and I'd look up and it'd be 1 o'clock and I was still in my pajamas. So I've definitely made artwork and done commissions that were tedious, and really you had to really push yourself to get up there and start doing your artwork. But this was not the case in this. It flowed out, and for most part, except for kind of planning themes, I just found images on my computer and just drew from the computer something that I would find that suited what I was looking for. And so in some ways it was a little bit planned, but not planned the way I normally plan a work of art, where every detail is kind of figured out, usually, especially if you're going to execute something like this. And again, I did this piece. I had no idea that it would get shown anywhere. I just made it. And I think there's when I initially started to think about doing the whale, I was talking to my wife and said, I don't think I can afford to do it full size. These are expensive panels, and maybe I should just do it half size. And she looked at me and she said, "Don't waste your time. It's a waste of time if you do it half size. It's about doing it full size." And she said, "I'll pay for the panels if you want."
Melville wrote a big book, and you have done a big painting. And well, it has an epic dimension, which I think is unusual in this day and age. But in your attempt to embrace whatever it is that we know America to be, whether we call it a democracy, it is a democracy, but it is a land, it is a nation, and it is diverse. And I think that you recognize that diversity. The rich, the poor, the young, the old, men, women, animals, humans, blacks, whites, natives. I think it's just astonishing, Jos, that you have recognized that we are all of these different possibilities, and that you have incorporated them into your image, into your panorama, into your mural. I'm at loss for a word to even describe the piece that you are sharing with us. Everybody is here, from the polar bear who's at the top to the creatures who are at the bottom. There are mice running along the bottom level. And obviously, it's the humans that you seem to focus on more than the animals. But you are it seems to me that you represent different environmental possibilities in the course of your mural.
Well, Yeah, and there's a big part of
landscape as well as it's the landscape of humanity, but it's also the geographical landscape.
right. I was just going to say that was because a lot of it has to do with kind of the exploitation of kind of the earth itself, and all the extraction that we've done. And so I to pick that, as well as the exploitation of people and in most cases workers. So, and that again, that was it was a major part of thinking of it. But on the other hand, I also put in things about civil rights. I put in things about suffrage. I put in parts of history that I thought were really important. That guy there's Martin Luther King, and there's also John Lewis, a Black Panther. Then that's Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone down below them.
Mm-hmm.
So they were, I combined them, and then there's young gay activists, and then next to them is actually the Black woman with her child is actually a homeless mother. And I think again, there's many depictions of women in this mural that they're depicted as. There's a Dorothea Lange image that I intended to juxtapose with the young Black mother, and a homeless encampment and an arrest of a homeless person. And I think that those, a lot of what this piece is about is the juxtaposition of images where, I put very rich people right next to very poor people, and there's a young Latinx immigrant worker, and I think this portrait of that young woman is one of my favorites in the book. I mean, it's in the book in the whale. In that I really feel like her expression and her gaze speaks volumes, and makes me not to have to say anything. And I think above it is a sweatshop of immigrant women from 100 years ago, working, making absolute subsistence wages, which I think in some ways has been too big a part of the American story as far as I'm concerned. And again, we the richest country in the world, and 1 out of 10 is food insecure right now. You're gonna be kidding me. Millions of hungry kids. So I think again, we keep moving forward, but I wonder, and we make social progress, but somehow the system that we have just can't seem to get out of its own way. And so at any rate, that's the piece. But I also want to say the piece also, there are parts of it that I find very uplifting, and I put my 3 grandchildren are in the mural, and they're surrounded by life from Baja that we see and felt and spent a lot of time seeing the unbelievable natural world. This last December, we were in a boat, actually in the Sea of Cortez, and we were looking at a school. We were in a couple of boats, actually. There was like 11 of us total. And we were looking at a school of a big colony of sea lions. And all of a sudden, there were probably 20 dolphins jumping at least 10 feet out in the air. right next to our boats. And the little 4-year-old, Calliope, looked up after it was over and she said, "Was that real?" She couldn't believe her own eyes. And I think when nature is that wonderful, you can hardly believe your own eyes. And I think that everything that's wrong, at least with the environment, is still fixable. It's near the very end. And many of my friends who know a lot more about the environment than I do think we may be done. But others, and I can't go there. I think we have to attempt to do the things we need to do to turn the ship, and we can do it. It's just we have to have the will to change the way we live. So, and I don't want the piece to just seem like this hopeless tale of the end of time, which in some ways that's what Melville's book was about. It was kind of the end of time, and it was the end of time.
Still live to tell the tale, and
yeah,
we know it, and it has, as I don't need to say, the book has become an American epic, and in certain ways, I think that your mural is an American epic too. Everybody is there. And I think you have a diversity of races, obviously people of different ages, the rich and poor, as I've mentioned before. But I really, the only work of literature that I think that is comparable is perhaps Whitman's Song of Myself, or his collection of poems, Leaves of Grass. And what Whitman does in language, you do in paint. It's staggering, it seems to me, and I hope that your work can, your mural can travel from coast to coast. You've embraced us coast to coast, but now it should also be able to travel coast to coast as well. You have plans for it to travel after it leaves Lawrence, which is, it's here through the month of October, yay, but I hope that it travels elsewhere after that.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion, and I have a wonderful gallery that is really trying to get it out there. There is nothing definite. I think it's going to be part of that a national show. I think it's 40 sites, and it's an extraction exhibit, and there's talk about it being a couple of possible sites to show it, but I don't have anything definite. I mean, there's no, and there has been interest from institutions to show it, and once they're interested, and then they actually get their tape measures out and measure the wall and say, we really don't have a wall.
How big is it exactly?
Huh?
How big is it exactly?
It's 51 feet by 14 feet. So
14 feet. It is the size of a whale.
It is the size of a whale, yes. Yeah. And so it is very portable. If anyone listening here has any suggestions, please go ahead and send them, get in touch with us. I would love to continue to I would love it to tour and show.
Jos, I also, you've spoken about the piece and in very hopeful terms, and I do think that it is a hopeful piece. Yet I think one aspect of your piece gives me great pause, and that is your representation of the waste that we have generated. You really do indicate that human beings are great trash makers.
Well, yeah, if we what we have to do is not get out of the idea that we just use something once and throw it away. It's, I mean, that's, how long do you think that it doesn't take forethought to think that that's probably the system that's going to work for long. Again, I think it is going to require a change of lifestyle to make to make this happen. And yeah, I mean, I think again, when you think of what plastic has done just to whales, in the oceans, and it's everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere in things that you wouldn't have spread into every organism. Teflon, you got to be kidding me. I mean, again, I think industry has just anything it could make that made money, it made it. And, and again, I've lived long enough to where I remember there weren't plastic bottles. I remember, there weren't plastic bags. You took your sandwich to school in a wax paper bag, and and you drank your milk out of a cardboard carton. I mean, it was more environmental than what we're doing now, where everything's plastic. So I don't think it's impossible. It's not impossible.
It's very interesting to me in looking at the mural that your representation of the polar bear is in quite a pristine environment. Obviously, it's an environment where not much can grow, so there are ice sheets. But as you move down toward the bottom, for example, in the whale's jaw, it is filled with trash. And I think that's despite the fact that you show an America that is we're pressed up against each other, and often in very loving relationships, as you represent Americans in the body of the whale. But as you get down toward the bottom, there's lots of trash. And I think I'm guessing that that's intentional on your part, that you wanted to suggest to the viewer that we're loading ourselves down.
That was intentional. It was really intentional. And the one part about the polar bear and the melting ice cap at the top, when I first started this, I did a 6-foot drawing of just a whale with the shading correctly and all that, as if it was in the water being lit from above. And then I used, that was on the wall and still is here, that I used that as a model to draw the lightness and darkness of the panels. That's a picture of one of the Pongas. That's Augustine, the fisherman that took me to see whales. So that's from Baja. But at any rate, that that empty part of the Arctic is intended to almost be like a spiritual resting place, and it's much less busy than almost anything else in the piece. And I intended it that way, and it's where the most of the light is hitting the top of the whale. And I was really moved that in Moby-Dick, there's a whole chapter on whiteness that is really just, it's another one of his strange Melville chapters. It's kind of a meditation on, it's almost philosophical. And so I wanted to have a slightly different feel for that part as you kind of look across the panorama of this, this whole arc of a whale. So, and then again, you're right. The bottom, actually, the jaw has, I think I saw this picture, and it was of a landfill, and there were like hundreds and hundreds of the old flip phones before the kind of cell phones we have. So they weren't that old, but there was so many of them. And so I think I drew about 60 or 70 of those phones. The one thing about drawing lots of bottles and lots of flip phones, and I think there's 300 and something cars in it. And after you draw a few of them, you don't have to look at the picture anymore. You can just keep drawing and just make slight variations, and they continue to work. So so drawing hundreds of bottles and flip phones and things like that, it seems tedious, but it didn't feel that way to me.
I also was delighted to find that embedded almost in the middle of the whale, a little off to the right, as I'm looking at the piece, is John Brown, an image of from Thomas Hart Benton's great image of John Brown, which is in the Kansas State House. And there he is in the middle of your democracy here.
It must have been a premonition that the whale was going to Kansas.
Yeah.
No, I think he's in that section. There's a bunch of different kind of religions depicted there, and I really wanted to depict.
Yeah.
I wanted to depict his kind of religion too, and so
his kind of religion is pretty political.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but again, I think, I think, the kind of questions that John Brown dealt with, I mean, those were being dealt with in Melville's time, and were issues that, he must have thought everyone was, people were really debating them. And, less than 15 years after he writes the book, there's a civil war about these issues. And so,
Well,
I see Ben is here.
I'm back. Thank you both again. I have some questions myself.
Hey, we just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I know. We're not ending. We're going to keep this going, but we also have some questions from online. But I wanted, Jos, you made reference to being able to almost draw cars in your sleep because you had drawn so many of them. Can you talk a little bit more about the process, Scratchboard, and what it is, and why you chose to do that?
Well, Scratchboard, first off, it's a board. In this case, they're actually eucalyptus boards. It's a green wood product. On top of the board, and it's waterproof. On top of the board is put kaolin clay and glue and a little titanium dioxide to make it a little bit whiter. So it's a clay body. And then on top of that, they use a non-reflective ink, black ink, that means it doesn't have any lacquer in it. So it's matte. So when you scratch through the black layer, the white layer, it shows itself. So it's reverse drawing, which I really like. I'm dyslexic, so doing stuff backwards has always been easy for me. So at any rate, I got interested in Scratchboard probably about 10 years ago as a medium that I could, because I was really sick of, I ran a production screen shop for 27 years. So I was really sick and tired of sitting at a computer and making art, which is what you do in a commercial shop. And in some ways, I identify with workers because the first day I worked, I started my screen shop, was just as hard as the last day that I worked there. The work never gets easier. It's really demanding. You have to do it right. There's something very unforgiving about the commercial atmosphere for an artist, but it made a good living for me, and I'm glad I did it, and I'm super happily retired now. But at any rate, so I was just looking for relief from the computer, and the drawing technique on Scratchboard seemed so direct and so wonderful that I just liked the physical activity of it. and so it became, just it became a very natural way for me to draw. I had a cartoonist friend, Spain Rodriguez, who passed away. He was one of the Zap cartoonists, and he said to me one day, he said, "Josh, you don't really become an artist until you feel like you can draw anything." And that there's nothing that you don't feel like you can draw anything. And I actually do believe that in this Scratchboard. I felt like I could draw anything. 300 cars, sure, I can draw that. Can you draw, 600 plastic bottles? Sure. And can you draw a whale's eye that actually draws a person in and makes you feel like you're staring in the eye of a whale? Yeah, I can do that. And I think when you get that confidence, just like being a musician or anything else, you can do that. And even the eye actually in this whale is about 4 times bigger than it should be. And it was the one part of doing this piece that I was really worried about. And I hadn't seen the whale together because I never had enough space to lay the whole thing out in my studio. So I did it piece by piece. And it's the one thing before I put it up, I laid out, when it was about 2/3 done, I laid it out. But the main thing I wanted to look at was to see if the exaggeration of the eye was going to be too cartoonish, because I was really worried that I didn't want to end up with kind of a Disney looking big-eyed animal. And as it turned out, because it was busy enough, I think you would have completely lost the eye if I hadn't done that. So I'm glad I did. But again, it was one of those things that I was just taking a chance when I was doing the actual drawing, because I couldn't see the whole piece all at once. But again, I'd done enough murals and stuff that I was used to working on large scale pieces. So that wasn't, it wasn't too much of a worry. But anyway. So
I have a question for both of you, leapfrogging off of the eye. Are there any sort of literal connections to anything out of the book about the eye, the gaze?
Melville does not really talk about the whale's eye, curiously. And I can't help, I've always felt that if he himself had ever really had an opportunity to look into a whale's eye, he never could have participated in the whaling endeavor.
That's interesting.
Well, I find the eye sort of one of the few calm areas in the whole composition. Is something that I keep coming back to when I spend time with it. Who's looking at who is sort of that. Jos, earlier you had said something about institutions wanting to show the piece, but after they measured their walls, it doesn't fit. And we have the same scenario here several months back, just double checking. And I don't think a lot of people know that it was sort of amended to fit this piece, because we were short by just a few inches, and there's only one section on the whale that hits the bottom of the whole composition. And I had suspected that this was a new drawing for a very specific reason. Can you talk about that new addition?
Yes, because I had to redraw the tail, the fluke, I decided I would add a coronavirus in the very end. So it was kind of funny because, the piece was done a year before coronavirus. But I had to cut 4 inches off the bottom of the piece. So I had to redraw that panel. And so it's different from there's now 2 versions of the whale. And again, but I put the coronavirus as you can't see it, but there's a couple of elements further up on that fluke, just a little bit, what would be to the left, and there's actually a picture of the Earth from space, and there's a very circular, round fish from a coral reef, and those circles were kind of depictions of fragility to me, and again, it's another case where I juxtaposed it. So I didn't just put it in there for because of the coronavirus. I also wanted it to relate. It relates to those images of, again, symbols of this Earth that's very fragile, and again, us as humans, the fragility of us and our, what a virus can do to us, and what it can do to any species. So so at any rate, so that's it wasn't, but yes, I did change it.
Yeah. Well,
And
we
again,
noticed it
but
right
again,
away.
yeah. It's funny. I think the journalist from the paper there, actually, who interviewed me, she actually noticed it. So she's a good journalist. She noticed that, well, if it was done then, why is the coronavirus there?
Right.
So
That's great. Beth, you've researched and seen more art related to this novel, probably more than anyone on the planet. Where do you think this piece fits in into all of that?
Well, I really think that I would choose to line up Josh's piece not with other art, but with the poetry of Walt Whitman. I think, and I would do that because I think that Whitman is a poet who has attempted in his Song of Myself, his great epic poem about the United States, he has attempted to see it all, rich and poor, all races, old and young, humans in relationship to the environment. And I think Josh is doing that in this mural too. And I don't really know of any other artist that is as capacious as he is with the mural here. I think that he is Whitmanian in his vision, or he is a Whitmaniac in his vision.
Whitmaniac, I like that.
Thing to really show American land, beginning with Native people. We haven't talked about his representation of Native people in this gigantic vision of his, but beginning with a concern that natives are there and that natives have their culture, which continues, of course, Whitman did the same. Whitman attempted to see all people. And so I can't think of another artist really that is comparable to Josh's vision, or another artist who has a vision that is comparable in its sweep and its scale as is Josh's. So it's very, I think it would be altogether appropriate not only for him to travel the country, and I hope the piece can do that, but also I hope that he will find ways to continue to ally it with Melville, who I think in Moby-Dick also has created an epic that really is embracing all cultures, all races. There is a capacity and energy that is can't be put into a capsule. it's bigger than that. And I think that Josh's mural does that. And it is so astonishing that we have it here in Lawrence, Kansas. And I understand that it'll be up for another month. And it is our good fortune, Josh, that you have shared that your amazing piece with us.
It's there because of you, Beth. I mean,
Well,
I think
I don't know.
because you actually were interested in it and helped guide me to Ben, and Ben immediately said he wanted to show it, which was lucky, I think. And again, I would love to show it wherever I can. I'm really pleased, and I'm really flattered that you said all those things. I
hope you can find a way to reproduce it somehow, even though it's
No,
criminal to.
I did. You couldn't really make a reproduction smaller than 6 feet where you see the details. And I already did. I did an edition of 20 prints, and since I'm really a printmaker, I signed those as an edition of 20. And once I sold the 20, which I did, that was it. Unfortunately, I probably could have sold hundreds and probably shouldn't have done that, but I'm principled enough where I won't make any more. So again, it's, hopefully people can see it. And I have made 2 half-size versions of it that have been shown other places that had smaller walls and stuff like that. But it's good, but it doesn't have the same impact as a full-size piece. And so, again, I'm open to any opportunity. Can I ask you a question, Elizabeth?
Absolutely.
I wanted to know, and I know you've seen so much and read and I know I'm not an academic, and your scholarship astounds me, but I wanted to know what you thought if Ahab had actually managed to kill Moby-Dick, what would become of Ahab?
Oh, well, I think I indicated to you that I thought he would become a pea. That is to say, I think he would, without his great goal, his vision of being able to slaughter this most amazing creature, he would have no purpose in life. He would become a weazened being. I think Ahab is his drive. There are parts in the novel where we can see that he has the capacity for loving. There are parts where of the novel that suggest that he could be a great leader, but he has reduced these capacities to a desire for revenge, which is all to vindicate himself. And he really comes to think of nothing but himself. And so this man of great intellect, great courage, great dynamism, persuasive powers. I mean, Ahab could be a fabulous politician. It sadly, excruciatingly becomes, I think, limited to concern only for himself. And it's a tragedy. And as we know, Ahab does not, Ishmael is the only person who survives the wreck of the Pequod, and it is Ishmael who can tell Ahab's story. But Ahab himself would have, without his desire for vengeance on Moby-Dick, he would have no life.
And again, as I think you know from us talking, that I actually see there's 2 survivors, Ishmael and the whale, and
Yes.
the whale was here before us as humans, and
Absolutely.
hopefully will be here after. And so that in some ways, seeing the whale as the kind of the symbol of the natural world.
There's one more survivor.
That
That is because I interrupted you, I'm sorry, but because Ishmael embraces the coffin on which Queequeg has embodied his tattoos, it's the memory of Queequeg that also survives.
Actually, I have to show you this. I made my own. I love the folk art of Moby Dick, so I made this coffin.
You made your own coffin. Oh
I made my own Queequeg coffin.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's fabulous.
So, and actually inside is a wooden Ishmael I made.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
Just thought I'd show you.
That's great.
Sorry, I had to show you that. But it's funny what artists will do when they're in quarantine under shelter.
Yeah. Do either one of you have? We could keep this thing going for days. I'm sure of that. But we are at about an hour, and I wanted to make sure if there were any questions that either of you had for each other before we move along.
I just want to say that I think another reason why Josh's piece is so important is because it really is a piece that is, and this goes beyond Melville, it is a piece that is dedicated to the necessity of preserving our environment.
Yeah.
And although it is human beings that primarily dominate, we see that pristine polar area at the top, and we come down from that to the jaw of the whale, which is filled with trashed telephones. Isn't that what's there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we go from, I think in the narrative of the mural, we move from those pristine Arctic regions, which we haven't yet trashed, down to the trash that is everywhere in our oceans and in our mountainsides. And I think Josh's mural is a powerful statement about American democracy and about our diversity, but it is also a very, very powerful environmental statement.
Yeah. That's the environment is the most important part of it to me now. There's politics and all those things almost don't matter next to the, and again, I ride my bike along the bay. I live next to the San Francisco Bay, and I ride my bike along the bay almost every day, and I can see oil tankers moored offshore that have no place to go with the oil that they're full of. And at the same time, we sign, they're going to allow drilling in the Arctic World Refuge. It's obscene. It's obscene. And so until we can get beyond that obscenity, I don't know. But yeah, the environment to me is that it's all we got really. And I think we have got to change. And I hope the piece helps people make that connection. And that's it.
Well, thank you for both of you for saying that, the sort of closing statements. I think what I've been able to see here with how it's being received from people, I was just telling Beth earlier, there was a group of teenagers that were in here today that I gave a tour to, that this one boy was quiet the whole time until the very end. And he said, "This is the most incredible thing I've ever seen." And hearing from so many different people of different ages and backgrounds and approaches to art or a gallery experience, to have them have their own connection to what this is or what it's about. You know, the imagery that's in there, some of it's known. You know, they recognize it from somewhere. The way in which you've been able to execute such a variety into one piece, I have not seen anything like it. I keep looking for something like, where have I seen something like this before? And I can't I can't put my finger on it. And I think any piece of art, whether it's literature, music, or visual art, that can reach people from such varied backgrounds, I think says a lot about your ideas and your approach and the execution of the whole thing. And I wanted to say, so thank you for making it. And thank you, Beth, for connecting us.
Josh,
It
for
is
bringing
here.
us together and for bringing us into this discussion. It's really been terrific, Josh.
It is here because of you, Beth.
Wow.
You can keep shaking your head no, but it's true. So really, thank you, and Jos. I can't say enough great things about this piece, and it's been really great working with you throughout this whole time.
Well, if we're giving thanks to you too, Ben, for making it happen.
Yeah, I have to say my thank yous. Beth, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've read enough of your work to know how important your thoughts are about art, and so it means a lot to me. You've been really kind to me, and I appreciate it. And thank you very much, Ben. You've been great and wonderful to work with, and also a person you can't see, Marlo Angel, who's behind the scenes. Was wonderful, and she's put this on.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I have to thank my dear friend Tim Drescher. He's the person who wrote the description of all the catalog of all the images that are in the whale that has been used in the gallery. And he's a dear friend, and I want to thank him. And then I really want to thank Lonnie Lee from Vessel Gallery and Amy Spencer from the Richmond Art Center. Both of these people have been so supportive of me as an artist and helping to promote the whale. I really would be amiss to not thank them, and I want to thank both of them very much. So thank you. It's an honor to be here with you, Beth. I can't tell you that.
Well, it's altogether mutual, let me tell you.
Thank you for all of that. And sort of in closing to this show, just a reminder that we are open 7 days a week. It's a free exhibition. It runs through October 24th, and there is a great gallery guide that Beth was waving in the camera. That really, your friend did a great job, sort of further explaining some of the images and the folks that are depicted in the piece. So again, thank you all so much, and thanks for everybody that joined us out on the internet, and come and see the show. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Take care.